Thank you. Members of the audience are welcome to make comments at the time designated on the agenda. Please register at the sign-up sheet at the door. Limit your comments to 3 minutes when your name is called. Out of respect for all individuals, please refrain from personal criticisms in an open forum. And you can read further on policy 167.3 for more information. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'd like to make a motion to change the agenda to add action item F to approve the purchase of new vans for the transportation department. Support.
Okay. Motion from Kim and second by Liz to add item agenda F for the purchase of new vans for the transportation department. All in favor of the agenda as amended, please say aye. Aye. All opposed say the same. Motion to approve the amended agenda carries as presented. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion from Kim, support from Pam. All in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say the same. Motion to approve the agenda carries. And next on the list, we have our fiscal year audit report.
Yeah, we have Dave Nielsen here with us tonight from Manor Casterson. I came so close. Appreciate Dave being here. He and his team came out and spent 3 days with us this summer to go through the audit. And now we get to hear the results.
Thanks, Garth. I appreciate it.
Is that microphone on? Can you tap the mic just to... No? Is there an on button for that, Gary?
There we go.
Thank you.
This guy is all over it. Thanks, Garth. Thanks, Scott, for the microphone. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for having us as your auditors. We certainly appreciate the opportunity. We've got a good audit report to go through tonight. I think everyone should have a copy of the bound packet in front of them. Looks like this.
This one?
You want the PowerPoint then, to go through the PowerPoint, or?
There is a PowerPoint. We don't have the slides available for the screen tonight.
But this is the bound packet you're talking
Yep,
about?
that's the bound packet.
So this is the actual audit?
Yep.
Yeah, everybody's got that? And then there's a PowerPoint in front of you as well.
There we go. Well, I want to say thank you to Garth and Scott for all of your help throughout the audit and everyone else that's involved. We start the process in the spring and we start planning for the audit. We meet throughout the summer. We do preliminary field work. We come back in August, we do final field work. There's communication throughout. Our questions and our requests of the district have been timely answered and accurately, so we appreciate that. I know we ask for a lot, so I just wanted to say thank you there. Our auditor's report is on page 1 of the big bound copy. So let's look at that first. Page 1, you will see the independent auditor's report. Our opinion is in the second paragraph on page 1. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the respective financial position of the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Allendale Public Schools as of June 30, 2023. That's a clean opinion, otherwise known as an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that we can give as auditors. So kudos there. A lot of hard work is done throughout the year to track the little details to get to this point where we do have an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. So kudos there. One thing to note on page 1, there was a new accounting standard adopted for fiscal year 23. That's GASB number 96. I won't bore you with the details, but essentially it resulted in a new form of capital asset being recorded on the full accrual financial statements, so not on the general fund. It's a different set of financial statements that's included in this packet. It's a new capital asset for subscription-based information technology, and then an offsetting charge to net position. So again, not your fund balance. We don't need to go into too much of the detail. It didn't have an impact on the general fund, but just wanted to mention that that did happen during 23. Page 7 and 8 is what I'm going to flip to next. We are into management's discussion and analysis. If you've heard me talk before, a reminder on the management discussion and analysis, it is great to read in conjunction with the financial statements. The district puts it together. There's a lot of good information contained in the management discussion and analysis. It also offers us a chance to look at some comparative information from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. So on page 7, we have the results of the operations. I just mentioned this because I talked a second ago about full accrual basis financial statements. In these financial statements, we have full accrual basis and modified accrual basis. And I'm not going to go into the detail there, but what you're used to looking at throughout the year, general fund, capital projects, debt service, that's the modified accrual basis of accounting. So we're going to focus on that tonight. But the information on page 7 is full accrual basis numbers. So when we look at total revenues across all of the funds, we have $31.8 million for 2023. That is an increase from 2022. Generally, with an increase in revenue means an increase in expenses. So if we look down below, actually one thing I want to mention before we get to expenses, under program revenues, the operating grants and contributions were at about $17.3 million for 23. Compare that to about $14.6 million for 2022. So pretty significant increase in operating grants and contributions received during 2023. What I was going to say with that is an increase in those operating grants and contributions means an increase in expenses. So if we look down a couple lines under the expenses section, you'll see the instruction and support services expenses for 2023 increased pretty significantly compared to 2022. It's about a $3.6 million increase between those two categories. Majority of that increase is related to salaries and benefits. I think that's a good takeaway to have if you're looking at that chart. On page 8, one thing I'll note under the state sources paragraph here, during fiscal year 23, the district did receive $9,150 on a per student basis from the state foundation allowance. That was an increase of about $450 per student compared to fiscal year 2022. And then if we look on page 8 at the comparative expenditures chart there, this is what you're used to seeing during the year. This is a summary of the expenditures at the fund level. So again, you can see the increases in instruction and support, where we have an increase in wages and retirement from 2022 to 2023, about 3.7 million increase there. Page 10 is what I will go to next. You'll notice on page 9, there's a summary of the budget to actual. We're going to get to that in a few pages. That is probably the most important page in this financial statement packet, so we will certainly get to that. But on page 10 at the top, it talks about long-term obligations. At June 30, 2023, Allendale had approximately $114 million in long-term obligations, which included approximately $93.6 million of outstanding bonds. There was also about $19.7 million outstanding on the school loan revolving fund, and then the remainder of the long-term obligations would be compensated absences and a lease liability. So in total, about $114 million. That did decrease compared to 2022, and we'll see that when we get to the footnote. That's on page 35. But the factors bearing on the district's future on page 10 are also very important to read when considering where we're at now, that's contained in these audited financial statements compared to where we're going in the future. So the first factor that's bearing on the district's future, certainly the uncertainty of the student foundation funding levels. That's always going to be a factor bearing on the district's future. And pair that with student count, whether that goes up or down. We all know that impacts our funding for a district. The second factor bearing on the district's future, over the past couple of years, you have received an increase in federal grants, primarily ESSER funds. Those have been utilized throughout the past couple of years in a very efficient manner, but that funding is going to run out. It is projected to be spent by the end of 2024. So I'm sure you've already had planning discussions in terms of what that looks like after that funding is done. Bullet point number 3 under factors is there is an enhancement millage that was passed a few years ago that has continued to be utilized by the district. Number 4, demographic projections. We touched on that a little bit with student count. Enrollment is projected to grow slightly, slowly over the next several years. But that's also pairing with the sentence in the middle of bullet point number 4, rising costs in many areas, including employee health insurance, retirement, contribution costs, utilities. Administration continues to be diligent in terms of where we're at now and where we're going in the future to plan for those continued increases. The last bullet point on page number 10, you have continued to utilize the school bond loan fund or the school loan revolving fund in terms of your debt. And in 2024, projected tax revenues will allow the district to start paying back the balance that's owed on that. Page 11, there is one more factor at the top of page 11. People in the audience and here know that there were bonds passed in May of 2017 for approximately $29.6 million. We have audited an extensive amount of those expenditures in accordance with Section 1351A of the revised school code. We don't have any findings there. So what that means is the bonds that were approved are being spent in accordance with the approved bond language and the state's requirements that are contained in the revised school code. So that's a good thing. Approximately $28.5 million has been spent of those bonds. Page 13 is what I'll go to next. We have the statement of net position. Again, this is the full accrual basis financial statements, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. The one thing I do want to note on this page is that it takes your fund level, your governmental funds financial statements, and it adds on the long-term debt and the capital assets of the district. Those are the two primary differences between the two sets of financial statements. So in total net position at the end of the year of a negative $72.3 million. That's very common across districts in the state. That is primarily a result of the net pension liability and the net OPEB liability that are required to be recorded on these financial statements. That's all I'm going to say on page 13. Page 15 is what I'll go to next. Now we can actually look at your general fund audited financial statements at June 30, 2023. We have the balance sheet on page 15 and 16. We have 4 major funds: the general fund, 2020 building and site bond fund, capital projects fund, and the 2016 refunding debt fund. The remainder of the funds, food service, student activities, and the other debt service funds are combined into that total non-major column. Across all funds, we have a total of assets of $18.2 million, of which the general fund accounts for almost $12.3 million of the total assets. In terms of liabilities, across all funds, we were just over $7 million at June 30, 2023, of which the general fund accounts for $6.8 million of the total liabilities. You can see the general fund is the operating fund. On to page 16, if we take total assets minus total liabilities, that's accounting fund stuff that I like to talk about, we get total fund balance. Total fund balance of just under $11.2 million across all funds. When we look at the general fund itself, total fund balance was $5.4 million, of which approximately $5.2 million is considered unassigned at year end. It's about 12.6% of total general fund revenue, as compared to about 11.6% of total general fund revenue last year. So a nice increase to 12.6% of total revenue there. A lot of hard work has gone into that 12.6% figure. But again, total fund balances were about $11.2 million. I guess one other thing I'll mention there too is the capital projects, that 2020 building and site bond, that's got $346,000 approximately left in fund balance. And then your general capital projects fund has about $4.1 million. So that's money that's reserved for future capital projects. Page 17 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for the governmental funds for the year ended June 30, 2023. Again, we have four major funds here. Total revenues across all funds were approximately $52.2 million, of which the general fund represents about $41 million of that total 52. You can see there's three main revenue sources here if you're looking at the revenue section. Property taxes, $13.2 million, state sources, $28.5 million, and federal revenues of just under $4.5 million. Those three sources account for the majority of the revenue of the district for 2023. In terms of total expenditures, again, we have, if you look under the expenditure section, instruction and support, those are up about $3.6 million from 2022, of which about $3.4 million is the salaries and retirement increase. Capital outlay that was spent out of the capital projects funds totaled just under $1.5 million. That's the continued investment in the district, high school parking lot, buses, et cetera. A lot of stuff needed to make the district run. Total expenditures across all funds were $59.6 million for 2023. At the top of page 18, you can see that the required debt service payments were made of approximately $15 million. So we paid down our outstanding long-term obligations. We did take on about $9.5 million in new debt for the school-owned revolving fund, but overall a net decrease in long-term obligations of about $5 million. The net change in the general fund balance was an increase of approximately $1.2 million, and across all funds, we had an increase in fund balance of approximately $2.2 million. Total fund balance at the end of the year for the general fund, I mentioned, that's about $5.4 million. The percentage I mentioned earlier was a total 12.6% of revenue. It's 13.6% of expenditures and outgoing transfers. So those are kind of your two benchmarks. All right, that's the financial statements, primarily for the general fund, but for all funds. I'm going to go ahead and jump to page 53. Let's look at the budget to actual schedule. The footnotes in between this page and page 53 have a lot of good information, but I think for tonight's purposes, let's go to page 53. 53 is the comparison between the original budget that was adopted in June of 2022, the final budget that was adopted in June of 2023, and then the actual results. It's probably the first page I would go to if I were going to be looking at this packet to say, what did the district say they were going to do, and did they do it? Well, I think this page tells a great story that you did what you said you were going to do. A lot of hard work, again, goes into making sure that the accounting is done accurately, but also thinking about the budget and trying to project a lot of variables. That far out in advance, that's tough to do. So to be able to see the variance with the final budget come in at about $160,000 on the revenue side, that's 0.4% of total revenue. That's pretty good. I'd say that's pretty impressive. On the expenditure side, we budgeted, Allendale budgeted about $37.4 million. Total actual expenditures were about $37.5 million. Meaning our variance there was about $140,000. That's again about 0.4%. That's very well done. In total, the final budget showed an increase to general fund balance of about $1.16 million. We came in at an increase to the general fund balance of $1.23 million. It's a variance of about $69,000. Again, an excellent variance to be able to report. So I think what that tells to me is that's really great fiscal accountability, right? We said we did what we said we were going to do. So kudos there to the district. I'm going to go ahead and jump to page 60. The only thing I'll mention on page 60 very quickly, in the letters you'll see this, the USDA sets a maximum amount of fund balance that's allowable in the food service fund. Based on our calculations, that's about $420,000. Right now, the food service fund has about $763,000 in fund balance. You'll see that in the management letter. It's pretty hard to spend down that money when you receive so much free food over the past few years through the USDA. So although they set the limit, you got a ton of additional resources over the past few years. It's really hard to spend money that fast. So just to let you know, that is slightly above the max, and there is a comment in the management letter about it, but that's where it'll stay. Page 80 is the last page that I want to touch on tonight. It is a summary of everything that's contained in the 81-page packet. It's the schedule of findings and question costs for the year ended June 30, 2023. Starts with the financial statements at the top. We have an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. Again, that's a clean audit report, the highest level of assurance that we can give as auditors. In relation to internal control over financial reporting, we have no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified. In terms of federal awards, because Allendale did spend more than $750,000 in federal funds, we have to do what's called a single audit, or a federal compliance audit, if you will. That section is in the middle of page 80. We had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the major program that we tested. That major program was the Education Stabilization Fund, which is primarily ESSER. A very common program to be tested across the state this year, if you wanted to guess. But again, no findings in terms of internal control over financial reporting, no findings related to internal control over the major programs that we tested for the single audit. That's about as clean of an audit report that I can give tonight. I did meet with Garth and Scott to go through this in detail. We met for probably about an hour, 45 minutes. So I kept it a little bit more high level tonight, but happy to answer any questions that may have come up. All right.
Appreciate the time you put in, and they always do a really nice job when they come out and sit with me for a while and ask about any areas that I might want to have them check. So like if we started a new account, or if we had a group that got larger than it had been before, and I want to make sure we're doing a nice job tracking that, they always come in and ask if there's any of those things that we can change. And so you guys do a great job of being really thorough when they come out, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming out.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. That's kind of what we're waiting. That he mentioned the food service fund, but the tables and things that we purchased weren't part of that, right?
They weren't part of it, so that I was in is gonna come out of that excess.
Yeah, so we've already started to do some work on addressing that food service fund as well.
Were they giving us a little bit of a time to get that down because?
Oh, yeah. No, well, by the end of the year, we'll try to work it down.
All right, next on the agenda is the public comment section. First on the list is Jason Dykstra, our athletic director.
Thanks for having me. Just wanted to start. Huge thank you to the board, Dr. Cooper and Troy, for hiring me. I've loved my time here the past 2 months. Met a ton of nice people. Some great programs, good success this fall. Let's give a brief sports update. Our boys cross country's been top 3 in the state. Should make a good run for state. We're looking at a charter bus for them, as well as hoping to get fire trucks, police trucks when they come back and win state. So a lot of success there. We had 1,250 runners on the 30th of September here. Great event. Finished first in that. I think there's probably 6 OK Red schools as well. So a lot of them do it to get prepared for regionals. We're hosting Division 1, 2, 3, and 4 regionals on the 30th. So that'll be another big event. Soccer's been great. 3 losses for boys soccer. Football is looking to make a good playoff run, hopefully. And volleyball's top 3rd or 4th in the conference. So also, some of you may be interested in the new conference talk. I've had some conversations with other athletic directors, principals, and people in the area, and 90-95% has been positive. So I think a lot of people are excited about the change, and I think it's what's best for our student athletes at Allendale. So be happy to answer any questions about that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I have a quick question. When you said you've talked to 90 to 95% of people and it's been positive, where do those people, is that people that are to also talking about moving, or is that in general all other schools?
People talk about moving, and I think there's an article that was released, and a lot of people caught a lot of traction. Huge Show posted it, and over 200 comments probably, and I thought majority of them, the comments were positive in the new conference. So that's good to hear.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Next on the list, Krista Yetzke.
Hi, I'd first like to say I agree with Pam about Mississippi Trial 1955. The book would be an acceptable addition to the high school resource room. As mentioned, there is some racial language. Additionally, the book details a gruesome torture of a fish, which was difficult to read. But the violence that was done to Emmett is off-screen and not detailed on the page. The reader is told what happened to Emmett, but it's not in the moment play-by-play telling. There are good teachable themes, such as doing the right thing, no matter how difficult. All in all, I appreciated the author's portrayal of such a tragic event in our history. Any hesitation I would have to this book is mild compared to some of the books we currently have on our school shelves. I appreciate that the book was brought to the board, that there was an opportunity for discussion, and that the board could see the study guide. The more transparency in curriculum and classroom resources, the better. Secondly, I support the removal of the masking policy. As we have learned, masks are ineffective. The size of a COVID molecule compared to the holes in the weave of a mask have been compared to a mosquito going through a chain link fence. On top of being ineffective, masks have many potential negative effects, such as causing breathing difficulties, exacerbated anxiety, and increased levels of carbon dioxide. Masks often become breeding grounds for various bacteria, as well as impair the development of communication and language skills, particularly in young children. We've learned from the OSHA industrial hygienists and PPE experts in our own community that a good filtration system is what's needed to prevent disease transmission. I would definitely support looking into the school's air quality and making sure we have good filtration. In conclusion, the mask policy is obsolete. Better methods are available, methods that work and do not affect our children's health or their learning. Please vote to remove the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Next on the list, John Stelmach.
Good evening. How are you tonight? I'm John Stelmach. I'm a father of 2 Allendale students. So first, I want to encourage the board to approve both books, Work in Progress and Mississippi Trial 1955. As Krista stated, there's a lot of good information. Even though difficult to read, I support that it's in a learning situation with trusted leaders and trusted teachers who have decided that this is the right book for the right curriculum. I would be remiss to not draw a connection between the cuts and changes at the Ottawa County Health Department and the timeliness of the request to remove policy 8450.01. I understand policy 8450 still protects the school by following health department mandates. I'm not going to go into a lot of the feelings, but I ask that there be considerations and protections for students, staff, and visitors to use masks as they deem appropriate without judgment and retribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Next on the list, Bob Picard.
Dr. Cooper, board members, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm standing up on behalf of your children and your teachers. I know you have good security. I don't want to step on any toes, but God has laid a lot of stuff in my lap lately that I'd like to come alongside of you and share with you. I've seen videos of students walking out of school in protest. Nobody's guarding them, keeping them safe in school. I've heard a middle school 8th grader talk that she's frightened in school. Nobody's there to protect her. I was walking down the hallway one day and I heard a car backfire on the street, and I heard kids starting to scream in the classroom. So I went in the classroom and I had to tell them, it was just a car. It wasn't anybody coming into our school. That's how frightened our children are. They are pleading for our help. We need armed guards in all our schools. We're finding out security is good. Our doors are locked, but with these assault rifles, they can get in real quickly. I just met a gentleman. I don't know too much about this. There's a 3M film that you can put on your doors that will keep the bullets from going through where they can get in. He told me even you had an axe, you could not get in to the classroom. I've got some information for everyone that I will pass out after I'm done speaking. I'm a retired Wyoming Public School employee, and to protect my staff and students, the only thing I could think of is I asked God, what can I do to protect them? God has a sense of humor because he knew I played baseball in college, and I set a record. I hit more batters than I did getting out. So this was my defense, and that's all I had. We can do a whole lot better than this. I work at Costco gas station. I met a veteran that came in. He has a protection agency, Chris Jansen. I said, Chris, would you mind getting your veterans in our schools? He said, absolutely. So I got his information on here. Not going to have any PTSD. Going to have veterans that have served just in the States. They can mentor students, and they would know how to guard the students and teachers. I've also and Dr. Cooper, I'm going to have a little reading for you. I've got a bill from Texas. Starting this school year, they have armed guards in all their schools. They passed a bill. So I've got a lot of information on this. Only by the grace of God, I met a Texas former police officer. He told me about a bill in Michigan. It's a Public Act 330 that school systems can go into this and get armed guards in their schools.
That's time.
Just a couple more seconds, please. In Lansing, they went into this and they have police officers in their schools. So Dr. Cooper, if you could please read this. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to call me. I'll sit down and talk with you, or Chris Well. So thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. All right, that's all that's on the list. If anyone else would like to come up and speak at the podium, you may. Okay. All right, next on the list, we have committee reports. The ad hoc, SEAB, anything to report there? Okay. And next on the list is our superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. See some dates coming up. Of course, we've got parent-teacher conferences. This is our first year where we've had them on back-to-back days. That's new. It used to be Tuesdays, Thursdays. We're going to do a Wednesday, Thursday this time, and then no school on that Friday. And then, of course, we have our Veterans Day ceremony coming up. Thank you to Mr. Vanderlaan. The high school always does a fantastic job with that. If you get a chance to be over here on November 10th at the Fine Arts Center, that's a really great event. We've got some terrific speakers coming. I think Representative Meerman's supposed to be there. Mark Huizinga, I think, is going to be there. There's going to be some great dignitaries, and of course we'll be able to honor our veterans. So if you can be there on the 10th at 11 at the Fine Arts Center, we'd love to have you there. I did want to give you an enrollment update. So count day was last Wednesday. Thank you to Nicole Pearson, who's not here tonight, but Nicole is our new pupil accounting registrar. You talk about a job where you drink from a fire hose. I mean, there is so much to learn in that job that she took over last, I believe it was April. And, you know, there's really no other job in the district that can prepare you for that job. That's like the only person who does that kind of work. So she has worked so hard to learn what she's doing and has done a great job with it. Of course, there's a lot of great resources that she's drawn from as well. But as it stands right now, it looks like our projected enrollment will be 2672. We had projected for 2665, so that would put us 7 students over our projected enrollment. We had a lot of students enroll the last week or so. The only thing I would caution about that is that, so if a student had been attending here throughout and then was absent on count day, we count them assuming they're coming back, but sometimes they're absent on count day because they're not coming back, and we don't know that yet. So if they moved last week and that happens, we get a records request next week and then we can no longer count them. The way the law works, if a student is absent on count day, and we don't see this too much because we want everybody to show up, but the reality is if you're not here, if you've been here before and you are excused absent, we have about 30 days to get you on the books to come back and you'll be okay. If you're unexcused absent, we got to account for you within 10 days. So that's why that number can fluctuate, and occasionally that's what will happen is a student who's been with us, they move, they don't tell us they move, they're not here on count day, we find out about a week later. So it's not unusual for 2 or 3 students to drop off this number. The good thing is I don't think we're going to drop below our projected number. So if nothing else, we should hit our budgeted number on enrollment. So that's exciting. If you probably see in the news, there's a few districts that are up, but a lot of districts I talked to, Zeeland's down about 30. Some of the others I've talked to are down a few. So I'm glad that we're at least able to hold steady. Any questions on the enrollment? Thank you. And then the only other that I have, and the board did get a chance to say hello to her, but I would like the whole crowd, if Beth Voss could stand for us. Beth is our new curriculum director, and we're very happy to have Beth join us. So I believe Beth has about 20 minutes of prepared statement now. That's right. She'll get plenty of chances to talk at board meetings, but we're very excited. Beth's been with the district for 20 plus years. She's been a reading specialist. She's been an academic coach, and we're just thrilled to have her in this role. And I'm pretty sure the teachers couldn't be happier either. I've got a lot of positive feedback. So thank you, Beth. We appreciate having you here. And that, sir, is all I have for my report today.
Thank you, Garth. Next up, we have board comments. We'll start at the left. Josh? Okay. And I asked the board members, as you are making comments, please turn on your microphone so the folks at home can hear also. Pam?
I would just like to thank all of our sports teams, coaches, parents, people that come out and help out and support our teams. The response has been wonderful, and I think everyone appreciates that. So thank you very much. Also, I want to thank Troy Vanderlaan. I, several years ago, was a director of a Kids Hope program and had a student that I mentored for many years and got to know the family. And they have their youngest students that are now in new options. And there was a little mix-up. The mom got a hold of me and needed some information, and Troy got back to me immediately. It was all ironed out. It was taken care of. And I just want to say thank you. You did a wonderful job, and you made that family very happy. And I have no comment tonight.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of reiterate what Pam mentioned, the sports teams. It's awesome seeing them doing so well, and Jason grabbing, running with the ball on short notice with a new season. I'm sure that wasn't easy, and our coaches. It's a kind of a thankless job sometimes to be a coach. So I appreciate all of them, and I also want to welcome Beth and say thank you to all the applicants we had for that position. I know we had a lot of good ones, and I'm sure it was a tough choice, but I'm sure you're going to do a great job. So that's it.
Mine's super quick. I had substantial people reaching out to me to kind of discuss action items, people I haven't had a chance to talk to before in the community. So it was nice to see some new faces, and so I just really appreciate community support and engagement in some of our action items and to kind of know how they've been feeling, so that's awesome.
I would like to thank Scott and Dr. Cooper and the board for the clean financial report. It's always nice to have this meeting and go through that information and know that we've got a great team.
Thanks, Kim. I would just like to say thank you to Jason for getting up there and saying what you said. Kind of put you on the spot there, so thank you. And I would like to, I know that we have just reviewed our safety procedures. We've done upgrades, and we've taken a good hard look at our school district. We've brought in many resources from other areas, including law enforcement. And I just ask that you take a peek at Mr. Picard's suggestions of arming the personnel or retired. Just take a look at it, make sure we didn't miss anything, and yeah, just take a look at that for me. Thank you. All right, next on the list we have our action items. We have a motion to approve TMP architectural for our bond planning.
Make a motion to approve TMP architectural for our bond planning and project as presented.
Support.
Motion from Kevin, support from Liz.
Yep, Mr. Torno and I talked with several architectural firms, and I got a lot of feedback from other districts that have used different companies in the area. And there's a lot of great architectural firms in the area. We just landed on TMP as a company that has a lot of experience. They've done billions of dollars worth of school work across the state of Michigan. They got an office, the closest one's in Kalamazoo, but they're up here all the time. They've done a lot of great work with Spring Lake Public Schools. They couldn't be happier with TMP. And you know, we selected Triangle as our construction management company for the pre-bonding process, and TMP and Triangle have worked together on previous projects, so it seems like a good partnership. Just a reminder, when we hired the architectural firm, this is our partner throughout the process. So with the construction manager, once the pre-bond is done, if we get the bond to pass, then we'll go out to bid, and it could be a different construction management company. But with the architect, you're going to stay with the architect because they're the ones who are going to design the changes to your facility that you're going to take out for your bond, and so you're going to want that consistency. You can change, it's not a good idea to change. So it's a big decision, but I do think that TMP is the right fit for Allendale.
Any further discussion?
Garth, is there a cost up until the bonding process? I mean, I know with...
They have like hourly fees that they charge, but they don't charge us if the bond doesn't pass.
Okay.
The only way that we would be charged is if the bond doesn't pass and we decide we're not going to do it anymore. So then we would have to pay them because obviously they're time. But if the bond passes, then their fees come out of the bond. And if they have to do a second bond, that's okay. They'll stay with us. But typically they don't get paid until the bond actually passes.
Anything further? All right, all in favor of using TMP Architectural for our bond and project, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion carries as presented to use TMP as our architectural firm. Next on our action items, do I have a motion to approve the use of a work in progress for our 7th grade ELA?
Motion to approve the use of a working process by material learner in seventh grade ELA.
Support.
Motion by Pam, support from Kim.
Yeah, you have the curriculum request change form for Mrs. Fenstermacher. We reviewed this a little bit at our work session in September. It's a book that I'm actually very interested in since I have my own seventh grader who'll be reading it. And so I look forward to that. I believe Mrs. Fenstermacher's here, yes? So if there are any questions, she's here to answer them. I told her my hope is that this will pass, and when their project is done, she can come back and be one of our educational highlights so we can hear how that goes, because I think that will be very interesting to see that, the project where they're going to reach out to another school reading the book at the same time. But I think this will be a great book for our seventh grade students to read, and I hope you'll support it.
Any questions? All in favor of the use of a work in progress, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion carries as presented. Do we have a motion to approve the use of Mississippi Trial 1955 in the high school resource room, ELA?
Motion to approve the use of Mississippi Trial 1955 in the high school resource room ELA.
Pam,
Support.
support from Kim.
Yeah, this again is another book that we reviewed during the work session. There was a request for some additional information, which I sent out to you. I appreciate the parents who spoke tonight. This again is a great book that I think will be very powerful in that classroom. Mr. Harrimans has used this in years past, but it had been a number of years since he'd used it, and so we just felt with the new process that we have in place to ensure that the board has an opportunity to review these materials as well as the community. We brought this back to you again. Again, I think it's just for everyone's understanding, it would be used in a 9th and 10th grade resource room class only. It's not something for our general 9th or 10th grade English classes. So I don't know if you had any other questions beyond that.
I just have a quick comment. I really appreciate the speed at which we were given some of the study guides and the content. The response was really great, and it was very transparent. Everything was laid out very nicely for us. I've had a ton of feedback from the community on this, and it has been positive. The request is as transparent as the process was with us. When that email does go out to parents that, hey, we're gonna, potentially be reading this book, that it's as transparent for them, so they, don't have to do a ton of digging. One parent I talked to in particular said, I'm trying to stay on top of it. I've got 5 kids and, all these various things. So the more information you can give me so I can quickly, look at it, that'd be great. But they were in support of using the book for historical context too, so.
So just to reiterate what you're asking for the same content that we received to go to the parents?
I don't know if it needs to be the same, but at least just spelled out maybe more than just the title of the book. Just transparent with them about the language that is in it. And I think the study guide was really helpful to see how the book was going to be framed and the teaching with that. I really enjoyed looking through that. So I think just to make sure that there's enough information given to parents so they can make a quick decision as opposed to reading the book, like we did. They don't have time to do that.
Yeah, we can do that.
Is Mr. Harriman's here?
I don't believe he is.
We good with that? Okay.
Yeah, and just for follow-up on that, I had no one reach out with any concerns on it, so I saw no pushback on anything.
No pushback, just conversation.
Right, I had none.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of the use of Mississippi Trial 1955, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion carries to use Mississippi Trial 1955 in the HS resource room, ELA. Next on the agenda is do we have a motion to approve the removal of board policy 8450.01?
I make a motion to approve the removal of board policy 8450.01.
Motion from Anna.
Support.
From Liz.
To follow up on this with Neola, I had broached this at a Neola workshop, and they weren't sure, it hadn't been brought to their attention before, so I asked them to do some digging. As we know, there's no legal standards that go with that policy. The response I got from Neola is that there's nothing requiring us to keep this policy. It can empower the district to respond swiftly if they choose to. All the language in there was optional at this point. The only thing they cautioned about is just making sure there's no language in the handbook regarding this, and I did not see any, so there should be no conflict there. But according to Neola, there is nothing requiring us to have this policy.
Thank you. Any further? All in favor to remove policy 8450.01, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion to remove policy 8450.1 passes as presented. Do we have a motion to approve the conference resolution?
I make a motion to approve the resolution concerning our intent to leave the OK conference.
Motion from Josh, second from Kevin.
Yeah, so just so in full transparency, this is a conversation that really has been going on for years. Like this isn't really a new conversation. We've been talking about leaving the OK conference for a while. It's just, I think the OK conference has gotten too big. You know, we've been in it for quite a while, but it's up to 48 schools, and you know, they range from high schools with 300 kids to high schools with over 2,000 students. And I think it's just hard for them to service all those communities. I think some of the tipping point frustration for us has been that they realign every 4 or 5 years. You know, 3 of the schools that are in our division this year won't be in our division next year. A couple of the schools that would be in our division offer very few sub-varsity sports, so it would be difficult for our student athletes to compete because Jason would be left scrambling trying to fill schedules because the schools that would be in our division don't offer all the sports that we do. But what's really frustrating about it is you've got, I don't know, at least probably half the league whose circumstance doesn't really change in every realignment. The Rockfords, the Hudsonvilles, you know, like the Jennisons, the bigger school districts, well, they're going to vote yes on realignment because it doesn't impact them. But it impacts us. So other school districts are deciding who Allendale gets to compete against. And it's that lack of control and voice for our student athletes that's very frustrating, and it's just not a good situation for our students. Now, the schools that are involved in the realignment or the new conference, yep, there's a little more distance to them. But 2 things I would say to that is, number one, I think most parents who've had students doing travel sports have become accustomed to longer travel. 2, I think there are a lot of conferences where the kind of travel like that is normal. 3, I anticipate that this conference at 7 schools now would be 14 to 16 in the next year or 2 from what we hear from other schools, in which case we would probably go back to 2 divisions and we'd tighten up that geography some. So I'm pretty confident in that as well. When we looked at this, and again, it's been an ongoing conversation for a while. It's ramped up starting this year, towards the end of the last school year and over the summer. We looked at all the options. And there's just no action inside the OK conference that they could take that's going to make it a better situation for us to stay. I just think in totality it's better for our student athletes to go. I will tell you that the proposed new conference name that we're talking about is the River Cities Alliance, because the schools that are involved are all on the river. I believe they're all on the Grand River. So it'd be the River Cities Alliance. And we looked at the word alliance rather than conference because one of the big draws for us, the thing that we've been talking about, is this is a tremendous opportunity for us to create things like an all-league band, an all-league choir, to have internal competitions for robotics or for Science Olympiad. There's just a lot of really neat opportunities here that being in a smaller conference will give us an opportunity to benefit all of our students, not just athletics. And so that's what's really exciting about this. We feel really comfortable about, we've reached out to a former superintendent, but who was also an athletic director for a lot of years in this area and a principal in this area. and about being a part-time commissioner for the new league, so that we have that resource to really make sure that we're tight on scheduling, we're tight on scheduling officials. The point of this resolution is to try to break amicably with the OK Conference, to let them know we appreciated the time we were in the OK Conference, but we're looking for a better opportunity for our students. We're hoping that the OK Conference schools will see it that way, and so that's why I'm asking us to send this resolution to them. The resolution is asking them to just grace us with allowing us to leave at the end of this school year.
I think that was my question is, so if I'm understanding it correctly, our agreement with them is we need to give them a little bit more notice, but we're asking them to allow us to dissolve earlier.
Technically in the bylaws, it says that you're supposed to give 2 years' notice to leave the conference. And so yes, we're asking them to move beyond that. But there is this language in the bylaws that also says you can ask to leave early. So we're not going around the bylaws. This request is actually in the bylaws. But I will say when it comes to the bylaws, and I want to be respectful of the OK Conference, but they haven't always been very good about following the bylaws. And for example, a perfect example is next year, the 2 new schools coming into our division, by the bylaws, that's a violation of the bylaws because their student population, the size of their districts, doesn't match with ours. And so the OK Conference has not always been real great about following their own bylaws. And so while I want to respect it, I also feel like we have to do what's best for Allendale students. And so we would like to have a nice amicable split. We want to continue competing against some of these schools that will stay in the OK Conference. So we'd like to maintain that relationship. But it's my opinion that if the other schools say no, and again, there's going to be schools voting on this, this wouldn't impact in the least. Their division's going to stay exactly the same. It won't impact them at all. Unfortunately, they're going to get a chance to vote. But even if they were to vote no, I think it's time for Allendale to leave. I've talked to the superintendents of the other districts. We just spoke again at 7:30 this morning. They all agree. It's time to go. If the OK Conference can do this so that we can move forward, together, that's great. And if not, we'll just move forward on our own. So that's how I would feel about that.
How many teams are in the conference?
7. So it would be,
And all 7 this morning said they will go.
Yep. All 7 said that they would go, and we talked about longevity because we don't want to get into it and then have them look for something else. There really is nothing else except the OK Conference in this area. So I think, as one of the superintendents said, this is a decades-long commitment. This isn't something we're going to jump into and want to jump out of. We think this is best for our student athletes.
So this was a meeting of the 7 superintendents of the 7 schools. When will they be asking their board for
tonight,
their resolution?
pretty much everybody's going through it tonight. We're going to meet at 6:30 tomorrow morning to debrief. I assume that hopefully all the boards will move forward with it, and we've actually already scheduled a meeting on Wednesday afternoon with all the superintendents and all the athletic directors so that we can really get moving on this.
And this does not impact regionals, districts, state.
You read my mind. That was the next thing I was going to say. Just so everyone knows, the MHSAA, when they do their tournaments every year, it's based on geography. So, I'm sure when we get to districts, even though Spring Lake is not one of the 7 schools going, great chance they'll end up in our district for a lot of the sports. So it does not impact that at all. MHSAA does not look at league affiliation when they assign teams to districts, regionals, that sort of thing. So it doesn't impact our tournament participation at all. Great question.
I'll make it. I don't know that I necessarily have any questions, but I want to make some comments because I probably have been reached out to this. I've been having this conversation for years. Just year after year after year, the same conversation. So, my mic is on. That was my comment.
I'm having trouble hearing you too, though, so.
Maybe we need a different mic system.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that. So, a couple of the things, one of the things is the voting system. So even this year, and the OK Conference touted it as a 42-6 vote and how positive that was. There are schools that vote yes that do not agree with the system because they actually have something to gain by not moving. So there are schools who are on this list who are leaving the OK conference who voted yes for the realignment because it actually benefits them to not move. And the majority of the people who vote based off of the points potential of that they will gain for football playoff standings. So unfortunately, I feel like the OK conference has moved to care more about one sport and aligning itself with the larger schools than having equal opportunity for schools of all sizes to actually be able to vote for themselves and have more input into that realignment. If you look into the realignment, they don't follow many of their own standards as far as distance, population, and then consistency. So who's moving around and going to different places. So those three things completely, even just on our own conference alignment, were shown this past year to not happen. The number one comment that I've received as far as a detractor to moving has been the distance. And I shared that with Dr. Cooper. So today I actually did the average. So if we were to stay in the proposed OK Blue, our average travel would be 17.28 miles to schools, and that's from our high school to their high school. Just not, some of them don't have their field right by there, but just in general from our high school to their high school. With the proposed new alliance, our River City Alliance, our average will be 28.66 miles, so about 11 miles further on average. And then, so again, that's a good advocacy to try and potentially maybe get some other schools that are nearer to us. But at the end of the day, not very far away. It's not a big deal. I think some of the benefits of it are we've really been pushing to try and support all teams at all levels. Going to start playing other schools that are only having a varsity team is very difficult for program building. We want to start building programs in 7th and 8th grade and really have them start strong in their freshman year and carry on through. And so when a school district does not have them at all levels, it's very difficult. This is more a comment about just for our school now and not so much on the district, or the realignment, but to just say, the way that we vote in this new alliance, I think should continue to be consistent and fair the way that we've been doing that. And then also I'd like to see us really put an emphasis on improving our athletic facilities with the new bond conversations that are going to be coming up. I know one of the other comments that I've had a lot is about people transferring because of athletic teams, success, facilities, etc. I think people will always have their reasons for leaving. We're never going to be able to combat all of that, but I do agree that maybe the hopes would be is that we could increase our facility usage and different things with that that go along with that to help just improve those things in the future.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say I'm in support of it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Anything further? All right. All in favor to approve the conference resolution, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion carries as presented.
Thank you.
We had an amendment earlier to add action item F to our agenda this evening. Do we have a motion to approve the purchase of new vans?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of 2 new vans.
Support. Motion by Josh, support from Kevin.
I want to start out by first saying, sorry to the board and to the community. We are trying really hard to be transparent and to get information out as timely as we can. And just so everyone understands, and the reason this was an added item is this opportunity was presented to us last Thursday. So this is why it wasn't on the agenda. It's why there wasn't information on it on the website. So just in case folks were wondering why the last minute. So we have been looking for transport vans, 10-passenger vans that we could use with some of our smaller sports teams, maybe with some of our music teams, our music groups, some other things like that that have smaller groups that we've been using buses to transport with. We came to the board, we had conversation, we talked about trying to find used vans. Mike and I have been looking. We've been looking. Anna sent me one this weekend, and I think that was pretty indicative of what we've been finding. That particular van had like 130,000 miles on it. I mean, it's hard to find one that has a reasonable amount of miles it's used. But the bigger concern is that one is a 15-passenger van, and we can't have a 15-passenger van. The law says it can only be a 10-passenger van.
Per district?
Yeah. Otherwise, you would have to have your bus, your CDL, is that right? You'd have to have a
If it's over
CDL.
10 passengers, it requires a CDL driver. That's what we're trying to get away with, is just having a chauffeur's license.
Yeah, so if we have a 10-passenger van, then the coach can get a chauffeur's license and drive, even a parent if we wanted to do that. So that's why the 10-passenger is the hard limit. And the inventory is really hard to get on these. People who went through the state bidding system a couple years ago, 2 years ago, had to wait for over a year for theirs to come in. So on new inventory, and because new inventory of 10-passenger vans, and I think the reason they're so hard to get is because outside of school, I mean, we're the only, I mean, if I could get for the same price a 12 or 15-passenger van, I would probably think to do that. But school districts are the only ones that have to have, by law, the 10-passenger van to use with the chauffeur's license. So that's why the inventory is so hard to get. But we did get contacted on Thursday. Hoekstra had ordered a couple for another client who backed out of it, and they said, hey, we've got these 2 vans. We can get them ready for you. They even do the painting on the side so that it's got our logo or decal on it. And so it's just an opportunity that presented itself. But it's really hard to find anything that's going to have a lower amount of mileage on it, and B, the hardest part is finding the 10-passenger vans. There's a lot of 12 and a lot of 15-passenger, but they won't help us. Mike crunched some numbers, and he went through and he looked at how many times we used a bus for a smaller group. So like bowling took 11 trips, golf had 17 girls, boys golf had 26. You talk about the average trip was about a 3.5-hour trip. So you look at the cost of the driver, fuel, all those things, the diesel, and to use our bus, to use these vans instead of using the bus, we think we can see $5,000 to $6,000 worth of savings per van over what it would cost us. So, hopefully in about 7 or 8 years, you've paid for the van just in the savings on the cost of the driver and the diesel fuel, because diesel fuel is outrageous right now. So that's why we want to do this. We think and the other thing is, one of the things we get jammed up on, especially in the spring, is drivers to do those special trips, because you have a lot of teams, you got to do your regular routes, but then to have drivers, some of these teams have to leave early to get to events on time, and so that takes drivers, and so having enough drivers and having enough buses can really be an issue. Having these 2 vans would really ease that. You don't need the driver as long as the coach has the chauffeur's license, and most are willing to do that, and you don't need a bus. So this would benefit us in a lot of ways. You're making an investment in a couple of vans that should last us easily 12 to 15 years if we maintain them, I would think easily. So,
What is this investment going to cost us?
$77,000 per van.
Yeah, thank you.
I did send them the information in case anybody's wondering.
Yeah.
Josh did that for your benefit so you all could hear the price tag.
I would like to amend the motion to include the price of $77,000 for each van.
Let me just double check, make sure that's exactly right.
All right. Josh would like to, with a motion to amend the motion to add the price of the van of $77,000 per van. Do I have
Support.
Okay.
Okay, so hold on, it's 77,600. Sorry. I knew it
77,000.
was in here, 77,600.
$77,600 per van. Okay. That was support from Kevin. Motion from Josh. Any discussion on adding that to the motion?
Can you remind me what we had budgeted for the used vans? Like roughly?
Yes, discussion's open. Go ahead, go ahead.
Can you remind me of what we were gonna spend for the used vans, just out of curiosity?
I don't think we put a number on it, did we, Anna? But I think we were trying to, I was hoping 40 or 50 would be the top that we would have to go
Okay.
on those. I think that seems. Yeah, so, yeah, because you'd be buying, at that price, the ones that we saw online, at that price for 40,000, you'd be getting about 70,000 miles on the van already. So it would have already had about 7 years worth of use on it by the time you got it.
All right, so right now, we have on the table we are amending the original motion. So I would like to amend the motion, and let's vote on that, and then we can open discussion again for the main motion, okay? So all in favor of the amendment to add the price of $77,600, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say the same. Okay, the motion will read, approve the purchase of new vans for $77,600 for the Transportation Department. We are now back into discussion for the main motion. Thank you. Just doing housekeeping.
Yep.
So if I'm looking at this correctly, we would be spending, let's say 40 or 50, well, let's just say 50 to round up, $100,000 for 2 used vans, or 155,200, okay, 155,200 for new ones. And based on a cost savings of approximately $6,000 a year to have the vans,
Each?
Each, yeah.
Yeah, so 12,000.
12,000. So in 4 years, they've paid for themselves.
Hopefully.
And we have brand new vans,
That will last us longer than 4
a
years.
lot longer, yeah. I mean, 'cause if we're looking at, what did you say? Like maybe possibly 12 to 15 years?
15 years is their
Yeah.
expected.
I just think we're getting a much better bang for our buck with the new vans, than we would be the other way. I mean, it's fortunate that this came up. I think it's a great idea.
Hey, Garth, does this come out of the general fund?
Yeah, it would,
or-
yeah.
Okay.
So, that's a lot, it's a lot of money. And I think we can all agree on that. What is the possibility, I mean, could we get by with one new van and continue to look for a second used van?
The used vans just aren't out there. I don't know if Mike's had any more luck than I have, but the 10-passenger used vans just aren't out there. They're all 12 and 15 passenger.
If you'd like to talk to all the other districts, nobody can find them. It's just a saturated market. The used market, they're not building. Hoekstra is actually going out to Ford and getting a prototype base for these so that they can build them from scratch. And that's what's allowing us to be able to get them from Hoekstra right now. And as soon as they hit their lots, schools are just biting on them because nobody can find them in the used market anymore right now. So.
And did we look at a cost analysis on if we can rent them for just individual or single-time use?
I have not looked at it.
You can't rent them. They don't have 12 or 10-passenger vans. It's like if you go to a rental place, they're 12 or 15 passenger. Because if you rented a van to take your whole family to Traverse City, you don't need to have a bus driver's license. Only schools have that requirement. So the rental places, that's why there's so many 15-passenger vans on the used market, because that's the ones that car rental places have. A 10-passenger van is just extremely unique. And my concern about getting one and waiting, one would be good. Obviously, anything would help. Two would really solve a lot of problems. And if we wait, A, it's going to be really hard to get, and B, 77 is going to look cheap 2 years from now. They're going to be $100 grand a piece in 2 years. Speculating.
Mike?
I'm allowed to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, come on up to the mic.
You gotta go to the
I
mic.
have a question for you anyway, so thanks.
Jennison bought 7 vans 2 years ago, and they purchased all of their vans brand new at $45,000 apiece. So in 2 years, it's gone from 45 to 77. And it's because the demand is so high, it's going to continue to do that. These people can just charge us what they want right now, and they know people are going to pay for it. I hate the price tag too, trust me. It's disgusting in my opinion. But
Well, it's not just the cost savings, but when you look in the news, every district talks about not having enough bus drivers. That's why Jennison got 7 vans, because that's 7 less bus drivers they need for those activity runs. That's one of the biggest parts about getting these is there have been times when we haven't had the drivers to, get people out there and get kids to their events and things like that. So there's the cost savings factor, but there's also the factor that this is 2 less drivers that you need. And again, spring I think is the worst when you've got the regular routes you got to run and all the spring sports that we have between middle school and high school. Having 2 less drivers needed would be a huge benefit.
Mike, would we be incurring any other costs with our mechanic, spare parts? I know most of our buses are common, diesel or gas. Does he need additional training or she to service these, or will we incur service charges from wherever we take the vans to be serviced?
our mechanic will be able to service these vans without any extra training or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay.
He already services the 5 that we have on our lot. These would be no different. They're gasoline, they're not diesel, so no extra training would be needed for that.
And what is the warranty? Is there a warranty period?
Yeah, that was in here too. I can't remember. Pam's gonna make me dig. Can't remember. I think it was 336, 3 years, 36,000.
Two weeks ago, we sent 4 students from the high school to MSU for the day for a choral thing. Great, I love it. I love that we can service that as well. But think of if that teacher had a chauffeur's license, which costs her $20 to get. She now is already getting paid to go out there. She drives her students there. I paid a driver 13 hours of wage to sit out at MSU and wait for them to do their thing for the day just to bring them back. And that's not even factored into some of those savings of cost. So I know I'll get some rebuttal from my drivers because they're going to be losing some of these trips and some of these wages, but until we get a fulfilled staffing, that's ultimately what we need to do.
The warranty is 3 years, 36,000 miles bumper to bumper, and then 5 years, 60,000 miles on the powertrain.
Any other questions for Mike before he takes off? All right. Anything else? All right, all in favor to approve?
It's a roll call because it's a monetary.
Oh,
Sorry.
thank you, thank you.
That was Amy.
Amy, go ahead.
Whispering in my ear over here.
Turkel,
Yes.
DeYoung,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Mango,
Yes.
Holsteg,
Yes.
Ramey. Yes. Benada. Yes.
Motion carries as presented.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn at 7:22?
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:22.
Support.
Second by Pam. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion to adjourn carries. Thank you, everyone.